the Secretary of Health, Wellness and Social Protection. And I just want to say a special good morning to you, Dr. Faith. How are you? And how did you make it through the night?
Good morning, good morning. Well, we survived the night, as we said. God probably really is a Trinbagonian because somehow we've been able to divert and get away from these things very frequently. So thank God for that.
All right. And I know, Dr. Faith, you would have been making sure that everything was on standby. There were ambulances stationed all around Tobago, that the healthcare was on alert. So tell me, how did things go last night? Were there anything out of the way? How did it run for you for your first major storm?
So it went pretty smoothly. I must give kudos to the health professionals who were really the ones putting things in place, because they've been the ones who have been on the ground way before I got here, way before I became secretary. And there was an entire event, emergency response system set up, where we in essence ensured that all of our health facilities were in the best place, meaning that, for example, the hospitals, we ensured that if there was a mass casualty, that we would have the space, we would have the people and so forth to respond to that quickly. As you rightly said, the ambulances were placed strategically throughout the island to ensure that we could respond. We were working very closely with the fire services also to ensure that we could use their ambulances, or their ambulances could respond as necessary. Thank God there was no there were a couple minor incidents that happened throughout the night, but nothing that was too serious. But I think all in all, we survived this, and I am again thankful to all of the health professionals who ensured that everything was put in place and ensured that everything ran smoothly throughout the night.
Okay, great. Now, just moving on a little bit, of course, yesterday we also had the budget debate, and during your contribution you spoke to a number of things, specifically that of the Roxboro Hospital that continues to be a concern for the minority, and the reason as to why it's not up and running yet. Now, for the viewers who may not have been able to tune into the budget debate yesterday, I'm also wondering if you can share with us some of those updates as to why we are at this point, but we have not seen the full rollout of the hospital as yet in Roxboro.
Certainly, it was disappointing that the minority leader would ask why is Roxboro not up and running, and particularly since the secretary with responsibility for health at the time when it was opened, the Prime Minister even came up to Tobago when it was opened, 2 years ago. The fact remains, though, that we still are not at the point where we can have inpatient services just yet. So to be clear, we have the health center services have been moved from out on the main road into the health facility. That has happened for quite some time now. We also have outpatient services. So if you just need to come in, check a doctor and go back home, you've been able to do that. We've been able to start dialysis services. We've been able to do those things. We've been able to do imaging. So if you need a CT scan, for example, the one at Scarborough was down for a little bit, we were able to bring people up to use the one at Roxboro. So that is available. What is not available just yet, though, are the inpatient services, meaning the services where people need to come in and sleep in the facility. And one of the reasons that is not up and running just yet is because we honestly have not gotten all of the necessary approvals to have, for example, the in-house pharmacy and those types of supporting services get approved. Now, what people did not realize is that even though we have a hospital, the various components of the hospital need to get their individual accreditation or approval or licensing from the various entities, the various regulatory entities. And unfortunately, it seems like when we were building the hospital, we did not take into consideration the requirements, the minimum requirements to get those kinds of approvals done. So we have a situation where when an entity comes in to try to give approval, when they do the assessment, they tell us, okay, that is not the right size, that is not the right place, that is not where that needs to be. We need to add this, that, and the other to get the approval, and that's what we've been doing. We've been working very closely with the contractors, working very closely with 𝐓𝐇𝐀 to make all of the adjustments that are required, because there's no point in not making the adjustments. We've already spent all of these millions of dollars. We need the facility. It is costing a heavy penny. Every time I get an email or a letter from 𝐓𝐇𝐀, I cringe because of the changes and the costs associated with the changes. But this is what we have to do to ensure that we actually get this facility up and running, fully up and running. That means, though, Candice, and I want to be very clear at this point, we do not have accident and emergency services. So if, for example, in the middle of the night, you need care, you need something happen and you need medical care, you cannot get that at Roxboro right now. We are not there yet. I am hoping that with the hard work of Dr. Duke, who's the medical chief of staff up there, and the entire team that's been working behind the scenes, I'm hoping that within the next couple months we would get everything up and running. But as of now, we do not have inpatient services just yet, and it is because we still need to get all of these approvals, all of these licensing completed before we can actually start.
All right. Now, I just want to move on a little bit to another thing that you mentioned in your presentation, and that was right in regards to the dump up at Studley Park. Now, we know that the dump up at Studley Park is under your division, and you said that it has 2 more years of capacity before it cannot be used anymore. So I want to know from you now, what are the initiatives or what is going to be put in place now to treat with that issue, to make sure that we have a place to dump our garbage?
Right, so let me first start by saying, as much as we like to say this Studley Park dump, it is actually not a dump, it's a landfill. And we use the term landfill because there are very specific mechanisms that are used to treat with the trash. So currently we only have 2 or 3 more years right now if we stay on the current piece of property. Now, there are additional pieces of property close by that we can expand to. I am hoping, though, that within the next year or 2, we would build out a comprehensive waste management program that would actually minimize the amount of waste that actually makes it to the dump. Right now, what we do, basically everything that we have to throw away, we throw it away, it goes into a garbage bag, it makes its way up to the dump, up to the landfill, to be dumped. What we should be doing is spending more time doing composting. So all of the biodegradable stuff, putting that into compost, making manure and that kind of thing with it. The stuff that needs to be recycled, the paper, the glass, the plastics, those things need to be taken out and recycled. And we have already started, Tobago has already started even before we got here, a significant recycling program that we need to beef up and ramp up. We actually have recycling bins that are being placed in our communities as we speak right now and so forth. So that needs to be beefed up. Now, when we do these 2 things, it means that the amount of garbage that actually goes to the landfill becomes much smaller, and that way we will not need as much space, and we can then figure out what is the next step. So my plan is to have that comprehensive waste management plan done so that we will have less garbage actually going to the landfill, and we'll be doing more ecologically friendly waste management.
To touch on one more thing before we round off. Now, I know that there are changes being made right now to grants and that sort of thing, but while that is happening, people are complaining that they are not accessing grants, whether it is a salary relief grant, a rental assistance. So I just want you to give me an idea what's been happening, what's the latest. I know a few months ago you said that there's going to be some releases for the rental relief. So I just want to get some updates on that. What's been happening?
Okay, so remember, it's important to recognize that the 2 grants that you are speaking about were actually COVID-19 specific related grants. And these were grants that actually should have been disbursed by the Ministry of Social Development. But because the process at the Ministry of Social Development was so slow over the last year or 2, the Tobago House of Assembly, rightly so, took up the responsibility to do those. So individuals who applied for rental assistance, I have been continually approving those. I will actually ask my officers to give me an update to see if there are any still outstanding rental assistance grants as it relates to those that applied for them during the COVID period. Of course, people continually coming asking for assistance, and those are being processed. But I will ask my officers for an update, because really there should not be many, if any at all, rental assistance grants that are still outstanding. the Tobago House of Assembly was never responsible for the salary relief grant. So that is not something that we are working with at the division. That is never something that I had taken up to do, because that was not part of what the Tobago House of Assembly was doing. What we are doing is continuing with our normal grant program. So for example, the food card that was under the Ministry of the Division of Finance has now moved over to the Division of Health, Wellness and Social Protection. We are now actually modifying the policy. So before, that policy used to include it being for a month, a one-off grant for a month. We are now modifying that. When those changes have been made, we will make an announcement about what that changes, because I want to ensure that we have everything, all of my I's dotted and my T's crossed before we speak about that. So we are modifying that, and we could still get the other grants. So if you've had, if you still need rental assistance now, you can still come in and apply and that kind of thing. So it is a process that is ongoing, but I just wanted to be clear that what was happening during the COVID-19 time is slightly different from what is happening now. And if there are people who are still waiting for assistance, I know that there is a backlog. As a matter of fact, while preparing for the budget debates, I asked my officers for an update for, the monthly reports and so forth, and I realized there are quite a number of clients who still need to be assigned to social workers and so forth. But I do know that the social workers are swamped, which is why we started recruiting. So that recruiting process is happening now. Hopefully we'll have a larger complement of social workers actually in place at the division soon, so that we can build out some more, so that we can actually have some of those clients who have been waiting to get them seen and get them dealt with. But again, it goes back to ensuring that we have the right policies in place, we have the people on the ground, and then we can roll out these things a lot faster than we do now. I am not pleased with how quickly we've been able to do it, but I am realizing that I need to slow down sometimes and figure out how to get the system to work a little faster with me, and it's just part of the process.
All right, great. I want to thank you so much, Dr. Faith, for joining us and giving us a little bit of an update on what's been happening in the health sector, and just your bits of contribution towards the budget debate yesterday in the House. So viewers, that's it just for that in the